fun watching you watch that. That was fun. I snuck in for the last few minutes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, you know, it's great seeing both of your films sort of back to back. What did you bring to this project that you learned from your first film? Anything in particular?
Just that I think, I don't know whether it was COVID or whatever grim period we've all been living through. I thought, you know, I like the comedy and the violence together. I think it's, I don't know. I guess I gotta come up with a new idea. But I wanted something to be, I pictured a group of people in a room and it playing this well.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's funny and those people are really good at what they do.
Yeah.
And it's very gratifying to hear the reaction. I mean, I know that most people will see this in, you know, the privacy of their own home, but I wanted something that was audience friendly. That a movie that I wanted to see, that I would like to see, where there's different things going on. That isn't just a romantic comedy, or it isn't just a heist movie, or a Marvel movie, or, you know, where there's different things. I think sometimes audiences are taken for granted that they can't handle tonal shifts, and you know.
Well, it's always interested me in a way. I mean, the Coens have been successful, certainly, with the idea of combining irony and dark humor and action. I mean, in some ways, Fargo never doesn't totally get to the point. I mean, there's good suspense in this picture. I mean, in terms of how it builds. I mean, it's working that genre simultaneously with the sort of dark comedy genre, and that's a tricky balance, I think. You know, and I think you pull it off nicely. But you know, it has surprised me that there aren't more sort of practitioners that have sort of followed this. I mean, Red Rock West. Have you seen Red Rock West?
Yeah, sure.
It's a terrific film, but it also has that similar vibe, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky balance. That's what if you can balance it. But the script came to me, and it was pretty much written like this, and so it was just my job to execute.
Yeah. And how did the script come to you? I mean,
a guy named Paul Birnbaum wrote it, who's written a bunch of movies. He wrote Hollywoodland, which was pretty successful, about George Reeves and George Reeves?
Yeah, who played Superman.
Superman, who may or may not have killed himself. But the script was written, and it was fully formed.
Mm-hmm.
We messed around with some stuff. But then, as I said, it was really up to me to cast it with people who could kind of ride the line between being taken seriously in the sincere parts and the violent parts and the struggle. The thing I liked about it was that everybody was up to their neck, kind of. Ham's character is widowed, obviously. Tina's character has come out the rotten end of a divorce and is still sleeping with her ex-husband, because if it isn't him, it's nobody.
Yeah.
And Micah Stock's character, Micah Stock is a guy who I acted in a play with, and he takes very big swings, and he's really a funny guy, and he's put on 30 pounds of eating cheeseburgers to look like that guy.
Yeah.
And he's an extremely handsome person, and you wouldn't know it by looking at him in that thing.
He reminds me of Bill Murray a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And he's just, but I knew he could execute it, and obviously Nick Mohammed is terrific.
Yeah.
So you people that like you knew that could do the job, and then you could achieve that balance, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, and what brought John Hamm to mind?
I just thought it was a chance for him to do something different. He kind of, he's put on a little weight, and he's kind of lumbers around, and he kind of reminds me of John Wayne in this a little bit. Yeah. He has he's clearly vulnerable, but you wouldn't want to tangle with him. He's a large person.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We have a very good shorthand, and doesn't take.
No, absolutely. I mean, you guys are pals, so that must have been fun, and he was game clearly.
Yeah.
I've seen him in a number of things. I think this is really the most substantial thing I've seen him do really since Mad Men.
Yeah, I mean, Tina got a chance to do something you don't see her do. And I think people, I'm friends with them, but they're not going to do you that kind of favor.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't like the script, they're,
Sure.
they'll do you a day on something and play
Yeah.
the UPS guy for fun, but
Yeah.
they're not going to, take on something like that unless they understand it and they get it, and that's a tribute to the screenwriter.
Yeah. When you approach, so you've now done 5 Mad Men episodes, 2 feature films. What is driving you? What appeals to you the most? Is it being on set and working with actors? Is it post-production? Is it script development? Or is it raising the money and dealing with all the gangsters?
Yeah, that's it. It's the raising the money thing.
Yeah.
Lying, cheating, sociopathic shitheads.
There you go.
No names. They know who they are. I think it's just telling stories. I like being part of a team. I like being in an ensemble. If I'm acting, I don't care. It doesn't. If it's a good story, it grabs you. Emotionally. I think for me mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it is chiefly an emotional medium. It's visual and it's emotional.
Yeah, for
it
sure.
sets people. You have a reaction to it or you don't.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's
so
about
I don't know, I'm just glad to be a
juxtapositions
part of it.
just putting things in motion in opposition to each other and building on that. And I mean, I think this was really pretty tight. I mean, the editing is good.
It's Tom McCardle, same guy who did the first one. He's merciless, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just he'll tell you. He made the mistake of telling me that a big scene in God's Pocket had to go too soon. And I'm like, that's the most important scene in the movie. What you're crazy. And 5 weeks later, I'm like, that scene has to go.
Yeah, right.
He knows. He's done. It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. It's a long road.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean it can take. Yeah. I don't
You
even
have
want
to
to think about
have
it.
faith. You lose faith. You regain it. You see. You have dark days, and then you regain.
Will anybody relate to
some
this at all?
optimism. Somebody comes up with an idea. That's another thing is collaborating. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have good collaborators.
Right.
If you don't, it's difficult because then you end up explaining yourself over and over and over. Whereas with people who get it, you don't have to explain
There's a
yourself
shorthand,
ever at all.
Yeah, and I'm sure with John Hamm and Tina Fey it was that way. Yeah.
And Nick took a minute. Nick was going to do it with an American accent, and he had worked on it very hard, and he had a really good American accent, but all the jokes kind of fell flat because they sounded the same, and we thought, well, I said, what if you do it with your English accent? And he said, oh, could I? Because I think he was, it got in the way of and he's such a good comedian. And then I just watched him basically gauge his performance off of Ham, and Ham knew it too, and he was just like, all right, I'll do what I'm going to, and you just,
he helps John Hamm a lot.
He does, and and there was the endless bits that he had to cut down for time, but it goes on and on and on.
Was there any improvisation in the?
Yeah, there was some. With that, we had to come up with a couple of lines that would justify Nick's having an English accent. So he said, the thing where the other guy says, "Why don't you go back to France?" The writer Paul came up with that, which is so funny. And the other one was a bit where he said, you're deflecting, and then he said, "Come on, sock it to me," and he said, "Really?" No. Ham said, "What does he lay it on me?" He said, "Really, you've been here for 10 years, and that's the closest you can. Why don't you come up with something more current, like sock it to me?" And then they would go back and forth, and it was great, but you couldn't use all of them.
Something I've discovered over the years. I mean, when you have an ensemble, and when you have, in this case, 2 characters that are spending a lot of time together, they need to know exactly how much space they can take up in relationship to each other. And Nick, knew exactly how much space he could take up without starting to encroach on John Hamm's sort of leading role in the whole bit.
And his stillness is a huge thing to be able to. It takes confidence to not do anything.
Sure. Yeah.
And he doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And then you just see him, for selling shitty no-name chips, and he just sort of kills with every. It's funny. It doesn't have to be super funny.
Right.
He's
Well, yeah, I mean, his character, just seeing his character, once he establishes it, just seeing it resonates and it works, and you get,
and he just very light touch so that you don't get sick of him,
mm-hmm.
and then you kill him in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm there like, Uh-oh.
Yeah.
You know, we better be near the end
No
of the
one
movie
wanted
at
to
this
die.
point.
They were like, no. You can't. The early screenings, people were like, why can't we, don't kill him. You shouldn't kill him.
Yeah, but you're gearing up to the end of the movie at that point, so it's okay. But yeah,
Yeah.
to have gotten rid of him in the middle of the movie would have been a terrible mistake.
How good is I mean, I've only seen this a few times in big rooms, and like the composer, who's a great guy, Ben Solly, and we tried to find that thing. I wanted that that sound to open the thing,
Yeah.
and then that was that guy's sound, the
Mhm.
Costco's sound, and then when they say they're going to go back, we should go visit the deaf guy, and then he came up with this. It's a cello, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you know, just this tension building, so you know it's not going to end
Drum,
well
yeah.
when they go back to that crazy house, which, by the way, is that house. We showed up there, and that's the way that place looked. We were like,
Yeah.
you could have just set up the camera and turned it on. It's a compound in Albuquerque's where we shot it, and that's how crazy that place looked. And we just scored with that location.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, 30 days of shooting.
Yeah.
How long were you in Albuquerque before you started shooting? 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like, 8 weeks underwater.
Yeah.
No, it was actually, the 8 weeks was fine. It was the finding out we didn't have as much money as they said we had.
Yeah, right.
Expecting that I would just say, okay, that's fine. We'll just make do. And I didn't say that. Yeah, it's
right,
true.
you had some difficulties in financing.
Little
and pulling the money
difficulties in
together.
financing, but nobody cares. Nobody cares how cold it was or hot it was or how tired you were.
Yeah.
Because if they're invested, they are. If they're not, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, the distribution, where's it going to go? Who's
It's
gonna
on
see
demand,
it?
and you can get it now wherever you get a movie, I guess. Amazon,
Yeah,
Apple,
Amazon.
Google,
Uh-huh.
wherever. It was in theaters for a little while, but if you're not a Marvel movie, there's no marketing really anymore. And it goes to Hulu. Or if you're
That would
getting on
be
an
good.
airplane, you can
Hulu.
get it on an airplane. Or if it's
Yeah.
international, it's on Sky TV or Sky, whatever pay-per-view
Sure.
that is. I'm not really too hip to
Yeah.
all the avenues you
It's
can
not
get
on
movies.
Amtrak yet.
Huh?
It's not on Amtrak yet.
It's not on Amtrak yet.
I mean, the ride to New York is a long ride. If
Yeah.
you're coming from Vermont, they could.
I hope it gets to Amtrak. I'm thrilled that it's on an airplane. I told somebody once, some fancy filmmaker that I met, that I saw his movie on an airplane, and he dropped his head and said, don't ever tell anybody you saw their movie on an airplane. And all I think is, every time I'm on an airplane, I'm like, I hope they showed my movie on this plane. And my wife, the other day, saw it on, JetBlue.
There you go.
So get your tickets, folks. I'm super. I mean, look, the world has changed. I'm super glad for this. I really am, because I think it plays better in a room full of people, and you know it's okay to laugh, and then you're like, oh, this is funny, and it informs. Everybody gets informed, and it's a communal thing, and it's I hope people go back to the movies because it's it's where I grew up.
Who liked this movie anyway? Anybody?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
So, do you have any other films planned at this point?
No?
No.
Anybody get the acting job? I just want to act. I want to just sit I want to act.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk.
It's time.
Yeah.
Get a job.
Yeah.
I got to pay the bills.
Yeah. What's your sense about the strike?
I heard they met again. What day is today? Sunday? Friday?
Uh-huh.
The writers, that is. I don't know. I mean, I feel like unless we know how much the streamers are making, how do you negotiate a deal? How do you negotiate a royalty on a number you don't know? You don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And no one's telling anybody how much money they're making.
Right.
Steven Soderbergh, who's very bright,
Yeah.
obviously, said in something I read that it's one of two things: either they're making more money than they say they are, and they don't want to pay anybody, or more likely, or maybe I just read it as more likely, they're making less money than they say they're making.
Yeah.
And Wall Street is going to eat them alive when they find when the whole thing unravels,
Sure.
and you realize how broken this model is. In any case, if they show this on something, I deserve to be paid for it.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
it took me 5 years to make it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and
No,
everybody
it's-
else in it, the music, everything, everybody in it, that's how it works. And everybody should be paid for their work. And if they're not telling you what they're making, then how do I know if this thing is a hit or a dud?
Yeah.
You know?
Right. And, you know, in the case of Netflix, you're paying a monthly fee, and so they're saying, well, you know, there's no specific revenue attached to the screenings of
Right.
this thing. But
That's the revenue stream
that's
is
the
flat.
dodge. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if they're not telling you how much this thing makes, or
Right.
when, and they know accurately because they know when you turn it on, when you turn it off. If you got bored, you know what.
Right.
So all the
Yeah.
information is there.
It's part of the streaming model,
That works
which
for
is
Netflix.
Yeah. Right.
Go ahead, Ron. We know where you live. President of Netflix.
Even the popular films on Netflix, only 30% of the people who put on even a popular film on Netflix don't finish it, which is a pretty big number.
Yeah.
And when you go to Amazon, if you're on Amazon Prime, you get 6 cents per viewed hour, which
Wow.
compared,
Rich.
yeah, it's
6 cents.
Yeah, which
What'll I
is
do?
nothing. Yeah, it's sort of the Spotify thing. I mean, musicians are familiar with this marginalization process through streaming.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that doesn't. So I think it's going to probably be a pretty big fight. And
Yeah, I do too.
I watched a couple of what were considered the hot shows on Netflix. One of them was Amazon, actually. One was Citadel, which was heavily hyped, $200 million budget. And the other was The Night Agent. And to me, they were sort of the best that streaming is coming up with right now, heavily promoted. And part of my response, even before it became a big issue, was that AI could have written those two scripts. You know,
it's
it was like,
all just an opinion, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know when you make something, not everybody's gonna. A lot of people are gonna hate it. A lot of people will be bored. They'll change the channel.
yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I don't expect
Sure.
everybody's gonna love it. I just want. I can handle the numbers.
Sure.
You know,
Just
that's
let me
what
know what they
Soderbergh
are.
said. He said I get a lot of adjectives. We're very comfortable with these numbers. He's like, well, I can handle the numbers. Just give them to me. You know, you used to know what you had a rating.
I thought the
Should we
script
ask
was
if
really
they have any
good.
questions?
Yeah, we're going to. I thought the script was good, by the
Oh.
way. I thought it was,
Thank you. I
it was
don't mean to
tight,
run the
and it
show.
was
I
like-
just didn't know if
please
we were
do.
Because I don't want to keep these
Is it-
people.
yes, who has a question? Yes, right here.
Sorry, I didn't know.
No.
we could do that. We
I,
didn't
the only,
do
it was the last thing I wanted to say.
Sorry.
It's okay. We have
Hello?
a
Hi.
little time. Yeah.
I just want to say I'm a really big fan. Mad Men and 30 Rock are actually my two favorite shows, so this was a really enjoyable time for me.
You're a big fan of 30
Mad Men
Rock
and
Mad
Mad
Men.
Men.
Yes. Great.
And I just wanted to ask, because like you said, you directed some episodes of Mad Men, and I was wondering how the experience of directing a show where you're a lead character, like how that influenced your directing for the show, and then how you took that into your directorial work for these two features.
Yeah, the difference. Thank you for the question. The difference is working on a television show. They have a lot of money. There's a studio, Lionsgate, and a network, AMC, and they have money. And you have a. By the time I directed, we had been doing it for 3 years, and they have, a unbelievably talented group of people that put that thing together. So you're very well supported. When you do something like this, you don't have a fraction of that kind of money, and it's all on you. I hired every person that did this. I got all the actors, raised a lot of the money, supervised some tailoring of the script, just did it all. And so that's a lot more difficult. There's a lot more things to think about. If you fall on your face, it's all your fault. Which is fine. I like being able to make those decisions. There's a million of them every day: red, blue, green, yellow, whatever. And I like doing that. And on Mad Men, a lot of those decisions were not mine. I would just do the scenes to the best of my ability, turn in my cut. They would mess with it, and add music to it. And it's someone else's show. It's a great learning ground, but it isn't yours.
Cool. Good answer. Yeah, and right back there.
Just want to say that was, I've been to a lot of movies. I'm an old guy. I've been to movies with this. Been to movies with crowds like this, that was the most spontaneous applause when the car crashed into the car I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, everybody remembered the plot point. That was the important thing about the airbag.
That's a good, that's a good lesson. When she says, and they go, it's $3,600 for a passenger air. She goes, a passenger airbag, and I said, I don't know anybody that I like that much. I came up with that line, but not to pat myself on the back, but to couch the information in a joke.
It was essential.
So they get the information that the passenger airbag is messed up. The things are on, the warning lights are on. You get it a couple times, and then he says passenger airbag, and she goes, "Go ahead, half my airbags are working just fine." So it's in there in your head, and then at the end, you get it.
It pays
He
off.
did it. It's a great setup by the writer, and it paid off. Yeah.
Yeah, you plant the seed and then you pay it off.
Yeah.
That was perfect. Yeah, people got it totally. Other questions, comments? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for an excellent movie. Question. So his assistant is picking up the phone, which he threw away, but you never picked up on it. Was there a reason?
Picked up the phone. That's the phone he lays on the desk.
I missed that one.
Yeah, it's in a bag. It's smashed up. Those insert shots are tricky because if you lay on it too long, it's like reading copy. You're supposed to say, I forget. You're supposed to say "Happy Birthday" twice or something. Like there's a time where the average person can read what's on the screen, and if you wait too long, it seems it's self-conscious. If you don't wait long enough, sometimes people don't get the information you're trying to give them. So that's a good example of me not waiting long enough.
There you go. Another question. Anybody else? Yeah.
Can we go back to God's Pocket for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. Risa, yesterday, the casting director, said she always had a problem making sure that women have a good voice in the movie. When every woman in this room applauded when she pulled out the gun and blew both those guys away. It was just a magnificent moment. But that isn't my question. That was just...
That's my mother-in-law, by the way.
Really? She was awesome.
That woman, Joyce Van Patten, is my mother-in-law.
That's awesome.
And she did that in one take. She's 89 years old.
I wouldn't mess with her if I were you.
She was so nervous. She rehearsed it 1,000 times. She was like, so I stepped there. I'm like, no. And they're all like, we got to go. I'm like, the crew was like, we got to do this. And then she would go, wait, I go to here? I'm like, no, you got to go here, and then you turn back, remember? And then she goes, all right. And they did it, and she did it one take.
At the end, the funeral director gets punched in the face at the front of the stairs. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I blinked and I missed something. Who was the guy that punched him, and why did he get punched in the face? Other than being a jerk.
I forget. It's been, 7 years or something since I did. I forget. There's some long-standing. In the beginning of the movie, he said, they fight. They know everybody who cheats at cards and who slaps their kids around, and he goes and punches them in the opening sequence, and then you see it. And I forget. Does it come back around again at the end?
And he's got the things in his nose.
Yeah, he's got the things in. I cannot remember the answer to that question.
Okay. No, both movies are wonderful too.
Thank you.
A lot of fun.
Thank you.
Got a question up here.
Yeah, it's a God's pocket question, and maybe you're not going to be able to answer it because if you've seen it very recently, does all the political bullshit that we've had over the last 5 or 6 years about the working class, does that give you a different way of looking at that film since you made it?
Well, it's a period piece. It's supposed to be 1978. It's tricky to do that because we didn't have any money, so you basically kind of keep the background in soft focus, get a bunch of old cars, and that's when the book is written. But I don't know. I'm drawn to weird, low rent stories. I mean, this place, we made this up, Buckland County. There's no name for this town. We shot it in Albuquerque, but only because it looks so seedy. And I don't know, there's something, the immediacy of someone who is hand to mouth. This guy, Mickey, and that thing is, literally needs to bury that kid to save this marriage to this woman that he has no business probably being married to in his head in the first place. And so then it's a sequence of events. It's not a big story. None of these stories are big stories, except for the sort of concept of the two women with the same name. They're little stories. It's a couple of days. It's 10 days or whatever it is. I don't know. It's like what people do when they're pushed. It's in a nutshell, it's people that are prepared to do things that most of us are not prepared to do. Interests the hell out of me.
And Maggie Moore is based on a real story.
Maggie Moore's, there were two women in Houston in the year 2000 named Mary Morris, who were both murdered, and they never figured it out. And Paul Birnbaum saw that on TV, was somewhere, heard about it, read about it, and thought that's an interesting springboard for a story. So he used that idea and cooked up this whole story. When we were coming out, when the trailer came out, both of the daughters reached out to him on his Facebook page saying, "You made a comedy out of my mother's murder." And I spoke to both these women on a conference call and assured them, like, not only would I never do that, I don't know anything about the real details of that. He just, kicked off this story.
Right. Everybody's
fake in this story.
Right.
There's no real characters in this story. It just sprung from that concept. So, but it is still an open case. It was in Houston in the year 2000, and it's, Crime Stoppers they're still trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, just the kernel of an idea
Yeah.
that germinated. Other questions, comments? Somebody back there. Yeah? Okay. Whoa, all the way back.
Nosebleeders.
Yeah.
The best view, though. I just wanted to ask you about what was it like, you said you hadn't seen the film on the big screen very much, and so what was it like as a director having the opportunity to sit here and have that reaction at the end when she finally hit, the big payoff? How did that feel for you?
Like complete validation. You sit, you play it over in your head over and over and over, and you think, that's if I do this, and then I do this, and we set that up in the middle somewhere, and then maybe one more, slight push there, and you recut it, and you ask other people's opinions, and you show it to 3 or 4 people. It was COVID, so we couldn't have screenings. We didn't have the money for test screenings either, but the editor's house is in LA, so we would invite people over, and we would, drink a few beers and show them the cut that we had, and they'd go, I don't get, and you go, okay. And if you got a note more than a couple times, you'd be like, well, this is a problem, because some people are confused at this point, or they're bored here. But test screenings, like, they would do a normal size, a room full of people, and you'd find out very quickly where you were falling down or deficient or whatever. So to hear that laugh is to know that it worked as well as I hoped it would work. And it's, I watched it, I saw, the first time I saw it fully, all the bells and whistles, was in a room with 600 people in LA, and me standing in the back with a glass of tequila about that big, hoping that it would work. And the first laugh I think it gets as an indicator is when the woman has the cheesecake stuck on her face. And if they don't laugh at that, then I knew I was in trouble. And I've had a few of those screenings too, and you think, oh, this is going to be a great room, and it just not a peep. So
every audience is different.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but it sounds like it was validating and satisfying, second only to getting the teddy bear.
Yeah.
We have one more question. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your favorite moment, during filming?
My which?
What was your favorite moment during filming?
During filming? The last thing we shot was that car crash. And that was probably it, because I knew I was finished. I didn't have to see any of those people ever again. No, it was a lot of lead up. We went over and over and over this thing, and we didn't have as much money as we would have liked, and so we had to find 2 cars because there was the one car that she drove, and then you have to find a twin to that. So you pick this obscure, weird little Toyota Camry, and then someone has to go somewhere in this country because you find it online, and then they go and then they spray paint this thing, and then you got to take the engine out of it, and you put a big cable on this thing, and it's crazy what they do. That car crash is behind that SUV is a big, what looks like a spool of thread, and with a giant cable, it goes underneath the black car, and it hooks onto the front of the Toyota, which they've taken the engine out of. And we've shot a bunch of stuff with Tina, then we get her out of the car, and then you just hit the button, and they yank that thing and you smash the hell out of both of those cars, which you can only do once. So we put a bunch of GoPro cameras inside the car, a couple of those shots. Most of the GoPros just fell off. They would just, the impact would just knock them out the window or whatever. So, it was very nerve-wracking, and it was the last thing we did. And, it worked. So that was probably the one. Thank you very much.
Well, John, this is a lot of fun. So a great closing night for us, and so happy to have you
So
here
glad
to be a part
of it. Thank you for having me.
Cool. All right.
Thank you all.